is happening, people? It is Brian Alsruhe, NEVERsate.com, and for today's video, it's actually kind of the answer to a bunch of different people's questions, because I regularly get DMs or emails of people saying, hey man, I'm a high schooler. What strength were you when you were in high school? Hey man, I'm 26 years old, just got out of college. What strength were you at this time? Just because people are trying to gauge where they are. Now, the first thing I will say is that comparison to other people is dumb and you shouldn't do it, but everyone does. I do it, you do it, we all do it. It's just how we measure where we are. It's dumb and we shouldn't do it. You should only be competing with yourself. However, that's not reality. You're still gonna look at stuff and you're still gonna be wondering where you should be at this given time. So I thought what I would do is kind of explain to you guys my lifting journey a little bit. I actually have another video that I'm going to stick in the description down below, as well as my journey into Strongman. So it'll be kind of like my entire lifting journey and then also my Strongman journey. And just how I got involved in both those, because those are longer stories in general. But this one's gonna be talking more about the different stages that I was at and what weights I was pushing or pulling or doing whatever with at that time. So I don't know how long this video is gonna last. So what I have done, like I do in all my videos, is I'm going to stick timestamps down below in not only the description, but also in the comments. So if you guys wanna jump around, you can do that. Also, I'm gonna be going back 10 years to some videos of me hitting some of these lifts. So you guys will get the chance to kind of go back and see what I looked like 10 years ago, what types of weight I was moving, what my body looked like, all those things. So, all of that will be listed in the description. So if you guys want to jump around, feel free. If you guys want to list the whole story, settle in. All right, so just starting out, as many of you can probably guess, I have not lived a very normal life by any means. Nothing along the way has been very much like how everyone else's life has gone. And my strength journey actually started when I really think about my development, probably at about 5 years old, maybe even younger. I come from a working family who did not have much money at all. So both of my parents worked full time. There was no childcare, daycare at that time. So it was always interesting. I got left on my own a lot with my sisters, with my crazy grandmother. It was an interesting childhood. And part of that was my dad had to work side jobs every single weekend as side money to pay for Christmas presents or pay the electric bill or whatever the case may be. And he did construction. So it was all heavy manual labor, and he would take me along on the job sites with him because honestly, I had too much energy. So he would stick me on a job site and would give me like a 2x4 and a box of nails and a full man-sized hammer and say, see how many nails you can put in that 2x4. Or literally, he would have me dig a hole to fill it back in and dig another hole, or just sweep up things, or move lumber from here to there to back over there. And this continued literally from a very, very young child, like 5. Obviously I wasn't doing very big things at 5 years old, but big things for a 5-year-old, absolutely, like swinging a full-size hammer. And then that continued throughout my entire life. I worked with my dad every single summer, weekends, whenever I did, all the way out through until I started my counterterrorism job when I guess I was 26 years old. I did physical labor that entire time. And anyone who has done physical labor will tell you that you get a certain amount of strength that you would not have had otherwise. So as far as my actual beginnings, when other kids at 5 years old were like playing on an iPad or video games or reading books, I was swinging hammers and carrying lumber. So I think it probably started there. Now, for those of you wondering, I turned 40 in a couple months because I was born in 1980. So for those of you who watch Stranger Things, that kind of time era, I was a little kid at that time. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. And there was no real information about lifting weights and stuff like that, but there were a lot of very cool things going on. Like He-Man was really big, Ninja Turtles were big, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Sylvester Stallone, everyone that I looked up to had muscles. I can remember being like 8 years old and trying to convince my friend Ryan that we need to do pull-ups all day because I'm trying to get ready for the American Gladiators. And the real original American Gladiators were people named like Blazer. That stupid thing showed up recently. So to a young man with my brain, I saw having muscles as success. So that became a huge, massive thing for me. I remember my parents, probably at around age 9 or 10, gave me a set of dumbbells that weighed 7 pounds. They were blue, like the blue coated ones. Strangely enough, right now, they are actually extra weight inside of some of our Atlas stones when I made this gym. But I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, so I would literally do thousands of push-ups and curls to music. At that time, we didn't have like online music or streaming music or anything like that. It was CDs, and a CD usually took 45 minutes to an hour, depending on who you were listening to. And I would literally stand in my parents' kitchen doing curls and push-ups with those dumbbells for a straight hour, just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, like an idiot. And that's when my parents kind of realized that I may be a little bit different. So around 12 or 13 years old, the biggest thing that I wanted in the world was a bench press. There were not like squat racks and stuff for your house at the time. Literally the best thing you could get was a concrete filled Weeder bench set, right? It was trash, but it was all that we had. However, my parents' logic explained to me that we didn't really have room to put this bench press anywhere, so what was gonna happen with it? And I convinced them, since I was an insomniac, I've had some trauma as a little kid, and so I have not been able to sleep literally since I was probably like 5, like, don't sleep, just don't. And because of that, I told my parents, I was like, well, I don't really sleep, and when I do sleep, it's either on the couch or on the floor, so why don't we just move the bed out of my room, and we'll put the bench press in there, and then I can work out anytime I want. And strangely enough, they bought in. Now, both my mom and dad are different people. They definitely have a little bit more faith in me than probably is healthy. And my dad, I truly think, wanted like a daredevil, and luckily enough, he got someone that was psycho enough to kind of go along with his schemes, because way before I really understood what was going on, my dad would kind of put me up to things to see if I had the courage to get through it. So I was raised a little bit differently than most people this age. There was no like coddling, there was no like making sure that I was okay. It was always like, let's see what we can get him to do. So realized that that's going on this entire time, and I was also playing baseball at a very good level. I was very, very good at baseball, and also had started martial arts. Now, when I was doing martial arts, it wasn't like point, tag, karate sparring kind of stuff. It was straight up, full-blown kickboxing, beat each other to death. Actually, in like the first like 2 weeks of my karate class, I was a white belt and got put up against a black belt who kicked me in the head. I got flash knocked out. And actually, you guys probably see my tooth is chipped still to this day from that, because I got flash knocked out, spit out my tooth, and then had to kneel down and finish class because it was kind of disrespectful for me to care about my teeth. Again, a little bit different of a time, a little bit different of an upbringing. So when I say some of these things, they may seem extreme, but they're absolutely not. And sometimes when you guys hear about my mindset, a lot of people are kind of like, you're a little out there. And it's literally just because I've been challenged my entire life. I've never really been like given the chance to kind of be like, oh, it's okay. It's always been like, let's see what else you can do. Let's see how much further we can push this. Between my parents to my karate teacher to my other coaches, everyone was always like, let's see where we can take this kid, because they saw some promise in me, and everyone just push. So that brings me to my high school. I finally went to high school, and it was very intimidating for me, but I did get my first chance to go to a weight training class, which is the first kind of real chance I got around actual weights. And the guy who ran the strength training program was the football coach at the time, and he wanted me to play football. However, I was playing baseball and the martial art thing, so I wasn't really interested. But he wanted to see everyone do as best they could, and he saw some promise in me. So he gave me some extra attention and like just kind of taught me the ropes of like make sure that I was doing squatting and benching before I would do like curls or anything else. He didn't care so much about deadlifting. I only deadlifted one time prior to being like 22 years old, and it was in high school. There was a trap bar set up with like 315, and one of my friends was like, I bet you can't pick that up. And I was like, I can pick that up, right? So I come from not only that background of like all the construction stuff, we also had farm animals and stuff at my house. So picking up heavy things was something that I was familiar with. So I went over to 315 and I cat back, picked it up. And I remember Coach Brown, the coach at the time, turned to me and was like, you better learn how to flatten out your back before you hurt yourself. To which my response was, I don't know what you're saying, old man. And I never deadlifted again until I was 22. Now, squatting was a big deal to this guy, especially squatting to parallel. And we were set up on the stage of our actual basketball court. So it was a really interesting kind of way to do it, because the squat racks were actually about 14 feet up on a platform with a railing, of course. And there were probably about 6 squat racks up there. But at the time, we had to climb up basically what was like an fire escape ladder to get to the squat rack and climb back down. Now this summer, I was fortunate enough to go back to my high school to see that they no longer lift there and have a much nicer weight room now. However, they replaced that ladder with some nice stairs, because the number of people who fell off that ladder or almost fell off that ladder after going for squats, because you guys know how it is in high school, 225 was like a massive deal, and you would try to do it as many times as possibly could, be completely deer-legged, and then still have that big test of trying to climb down a ladder. It was absolutely horrible. And I can absolutely remember the first time ever that I bench pressed. Now, I thought I was okay at bench press because that's what I did at my house all the time on my little concrete weights. However, I think those topped out probably around somewhere around 100 pounds. And I could do that a couple times, and I felt great because I could do all the weights that I had. However, the first time I walked in the weight room, all my friends who had been lifting before me could do 135, and so I laid down on the bench 135 and got completely stapled. I remember everyone like laughing and pointing at me, and me just feeling completely mortified, because all my friends, people that I was like, I think I'm stronger than you, could do this, and kind of easily, and I couldn't do it at all. I unracked it, fully shaking, started bringing it down, and full-blown chest just crushed. So I had to jump down with like the kind of smaller kids at 95 pounds and learn how to bench press there, and that definitely set something up in me where I was like, that's not happening again. Like, I'm going to be the top of this little area in a little bit of time. You give me enough time, I'm gonna get after it, right? So I approached it with that mentality, and I went after it every single day, all of the time. Like an absolute fool. I probably could have made 1,000 times more progress if I had any clue what I was doing. But again, remember, the internet wasn't even around at this time. There was no information sources. If you did have information sources, they were paper magazines. Like, people didn't go to gyms at that time. It was literally just kind of this obscure thing. I remember there was a guy that at my fighting place at the karate school, he could bench 400 pounds, and I felt that was like an unworldly other thing. So I turned to him for advice, because that's what you do. And he said, well, give me a couple bench press cues, which I had no idea they were actual cues, and told me that I should be eating as much lunch meat as possible after my lift, because I needed protein. And that was a completely random things to me in high school. I remember protein powder wasn't even really a thing. I remember, and if it was, I think it was like ground up cow tongue with fiberglass or something. It was like a ridiculously horrible tasting type of thing. I can remember the owner of Loyal, the guy who does my t-shirts, that guy, we went to high school together, and I remember he came in one time and was like, hey man, you hear about this new stuff, creatine monohydrate? Supposedly it's just as good as steroids. And at the time, creatine monohydrate was an unheard thing, so this was absolutely groundbreaking. That's how long ago all this was. So we didn't know anything. We just lifted like fools, as heavy, as often, as much as we possibly could, and hope for the best. Now, strangely enough, the area that I am from in Maryland is full of like Olympic athletes, world champions. Like, it's something in the water. There are a lot of strong people where I'm from. And I actually went to high school with Mike Jenkins, who is of strongman fame. He is now currently passed away, but he and I went to high school together. We were good friends, trained together, everything like that. And I can remember in that same stage weight room, there was a competition where you had to do your bench press, your body weight, as many times as possible. And the strongest kid pound for pound in school came down to Mike Jenkins, myself, and this chick named Becky. And I actually want to say that the chick named Becky beat both Mike and I, but Mike and I straight up like just pushed each other all the time. So I was obsessed with lifting weights and fighting in high school. Baseball had become almost like a job to me. I was talking scholarships, doing a lot of things, and it wasn't that much fun for me anymore, but fighting is where I wanted to be. UFC was just coming out, so I was like, man, I want to get into this. It was a really, really cool time as far as martial arts were concerned, and I still wanted muscles and things. However, my life was about ready to take a really big turn, because that summer before my junior year at fighting, I ended up blowing out my knee completely. I dislocated my kneecap, I tore my patella tendon, my MCL, my PCL. It was shredded, my kneecap shattered, it was dislocated, hanging behind my knee, and where my kneecap was, there was like a gap. It was a traumatic injury. My leg literally folded in half. It was disgusting, right? And that ended up having 3 surgeries before that thing was completely good. And I was in a cast from my groin all the way down to my ankle for 9 months. I was on crutches. So my leg completely atrophied. All the work that I'd done with the squats and stuff went away. I continued benching and actually finished high school benching 300 pounds. I may have gotten like 310 or 315 by the end of it, but that's butt shooting off and full blown bouncing off your chest, everything. But 300 pounds definitely was in my hands, hit my chest in some ballistic fashion and got locked out. So that's where I was there. I could not squat. I was not deadlifting, was not overhead pressing. So yeah, that's where I was at like 19 years old. But since my baseball career was over, all of the schools stopped calling, which means that I had to stay home for college. And I ended up going to Mount St. Mary's University, which I was able to commute to for my first 2 years. And those 2 years were a tough 2 years. I had never studied. I got kind of pushed through school from being a good athlete. Never took my books home, never did anything of that. And then when I went to a university and realized that I had to do it, it didn't go well. And I was more interested in like making friends and partying and doing things like that my first 2 years than I was really doing anything else. I did lift some, I absolutely did, but it was nothing serious. I really don't even think I was going for strength. I think I probably was just going when I felt like going randomly. And then actually I took over owning a karate school my junior year of college. So for my last 2 years, my junior year and my senior year, every moment that I wasn't in school, my dojo was 35 minutes away, so I had to drive to that, work full time there, and then get back to school, fall asleep, wake up, do my classes, and I did that every day. So there was no time for lifting in college. Now, after college, I graduated with some degrees that I had absolutely no interest in actually going into those fields. However, I did still have a passion for lifting and understanding the body, and I was fighting, so I decided to get my first personal training certification and got my first job as a personal trainer. Now, I worked that for about 2 weeks, and me being a personal trainer, Bye, dogs. But me being the second that I am, when I thought personal training, I was literally there from the moment that the club opened until the club closed, trying to sell, trying to learn, trying to lift, trying to do everything that I possibly could, because that is how I do things. Like, I have an addictive personality. If I jump in, and that's what I did. So once the club members saw that work ethic and they saw that I knew what I was talking about and I was doing some things, they ended up making me the head of personal training after 2 weeks. So then I was in charge of all of the other personal trainers, and I learned a lot about marketing and understanding the money and doing that kind of side of the business. At this time, I no longer had the karate school. I had sold that off and paid off my Jeep, and that was a good financial move. Now, the gym that I was working at is a big commercial chain called Merit Athletic Clubs, which is about as yuppie as you can get, and it didn't really fit with who I was. However, I did learn a lot of things that I didn't like about gyms and working with clients, and really, it was a great way to cut my teeth and kind of learn about the fitness industry. However, another personal trainer that I was working with at that time, who was an awesome guy, decided to start a separate health club called Athens Health Club. And I know there's some people watching this who probably still currently go to Athens Health Club, but that guy, Tom, who is a great guy, brought myself, another guy named Ryan Augst, Mike Jenkins, my wife. He brought a ton of people over that were just amazing athletes, amazing trainers, and that place was like a mecca for about 2 years. So I stayed at the very commercial Merit Athletic Clubs for 2 years and then jumped ship and ran the marketing or something for Tom over at Athens Health Club for, I guess, about 2 years. Now, at that time, some stuff went down. My wife's parents were living overseas at that time, and I went over during Christmas time to go visit them, got involved in kind of a situation involving some terrorist activity, and ended up getting a job with the government literally probably like 2 months later, and reported to my field office, and within a week I left to go do training and was gone for like 6 months, and then another 6 months, and kind of left for a while doing a lot of stuff with that. And during that time, doing the counterterrorism work, I traveled so much and spent so much time in other countries, other places, other things. Like, there was no stable work. It's worse than shift work. Like, there was no like, oh, now you're on nights, now you're on days. It was literally like, you're on days today, you're on nights tomorrow, you're on weekends the next. Like, it was horrible, right? And so there was no real way to do lifting the way that like you guys particularly do lifting. So that's when I started developing a lot of that giant set mentality. Now, I learned it from Chad Waterbury from a program called the Waterbury Summer Shredding Project or something like that. And I learned about giant sets there, and I started doing them. I felt much more athletic and happy. And then when I got involved with this job, I realized that I needed to save a lot more time and take advantage of the opportunities that I did at good gyms and things, because when you're traveling, you have to do that. So I turned to full body and just doing everything like that. Now, at the time, I was keeping a log on T Nation. If you guys have been part of T Nation for any amount of time and you were in the forums and you did the training logs, I am alpha from there. I've had one of the most read and followed training logs of all time on T Nation. However, I wish I would have done it on like YouTube, because then right now I'd be like 1,000-aire. But if you guys want to know exactly how I trained for like the last like almost decade, it is all written out there, all the full body, everything like that. So when people are like, man, so how'd you get like this? Like, it's all documented. I've been documenting literally since like 1998. It's all written down. Like, literally every workout is documented. Now, when I was both at Merit and Athens, I was kind of the strongest guy around. Mike Jenkins was there. He was much stronger than me, but he was kind of on a different level. He also weighed like 150 pounds more than me. So it was like a different type of thing. But like, as far as people my size in the gym, at that age, I would say at the end of Athens, I guess I was probably 25 before I left for the government. At 25, I could bench 405 because we had a bench-only powerlifting meet at Athens, and I showed up in jeans and a pair of flip-flops, and they told me I couldn't do it. So I told them, okay, I quit, and then they let me do it, and I won the whole thing. So I know I could bench 405 because I did it then. Squatting, I know I could hit 455 by 1, and deadlifting, I knew that I could hit 455 by 3, kind of in like a modified sumo position. Now, the reason why I know these numbers so well is because I chose to stay at those numbers, because literally I was the biggest fish in a small pond. No one was benching 405, no one was deadlifting more than 455. To me, 500-pound deadlift was literally like a Sasquatch. Like, it was never gonna happen. Like, people weren't able to do that. And when you're the biggest, strongest guy, sometimes it's really hard to find motivation. And I didn't see any reason to get any stronger. I thought I was gonna be involved in Athens for the rest of my life, and that's what I was going to do. However, when the government called, it all changed, and then my workouts changed, stuff like that. But that's kind of where I was strength-wise then. Now, During that government job, like I said, I was training differently, but I was still training for strength. So I ended up hitting a lot of big numbers in that time. What happened in about 2009, when I was having all those logs on T Nation and stuff, like I would see other people post stuff, and there were a couple people stronger than me on there, but honestly not many. And I was getting praised a lot, and I was believing the hype and everything. And people started calling me out saying like, I don't believe that you can squat 500 pounds. I don't believe you can do this, you can't do that. And I'd also just figured out this time that people would upload their lifts to YouTube. And when I went to YouTube and I searched like deadlifts, I'd see guys that literally weigh 100 pounds less than me deadlifting like 550 pounds. And I was like, well, of course, my first reaction was, well, that dude's on steroids because he can do something that I can't do. So obviously he must be cheating. He obviously couldn't have earned that. However, that logic didn't stand up very long because there were so many people that were stronger than me that were a lot smaller than me. So literally one day my glass ceiling got exploded. Like my brain was just like, tsh. I was like, okay, so you're telling me that there are people stronger than me, lighter than me, out there, I just need to get around them. So from that point on, my world turned to the internet because I was like, well, I'm gonna start proving to the people on T Nation that I can do these lifts I say, because a lot of people were claiming that I couldn't. So I was like, I'm gonna get on YouTube, I'm gonna start putting my lifts on there and kind of see where I could take this and stick that as my big pond. So rather than just looking at where I was doing at Golds or what I was doing at Athens or what I was doing wherever I was, now I was looking at it like, let's see what I can do in the world. And that really changed a lot of things for me. So in 2009, April 17th, 2009 to be exact, I uploaded my very first YouTube video, which was me doing a squat with 495 by 1. Now this was a PR at the time, and it was very, very stressful for me to do this because I was working for the government at the time and I could not show my face on any social media, any camera. So all of my videos, literally, I'm like this. That is where the hat comes from. Yes, I do have hair. I wear the hat all the time. And now when you guys see thumbnails, if you don't see the hat, no one recognizes me. So I have to wear the hat. All right, so there I am about 10 years after high school. I'm about 29 years old. I had just hit a 385 pound front squat. I was super, super pumped about that. Within that first year, I started deadlifting up to like the mid fives, kind of lower mid fives. My bench jumped up to like the mid 400s. I think my strict overhead press was around like 235, 245, something like that. And then of course that year started me squatting around 500 pounds. I think I ended around mid 5, around there. Now literally at that time, if I was not out of town or out of country for my job, I was so focused on lifting and fighting. That's all that I cared about. My deadlift had gone up to 625. My squat was right around 600 pounds at the time. And I actually benched 500 pounds for the very first time ever. I still think it's a fluke because it ended up taking me, I think, 5 or 6 years to break it again. But I did do it. Now after I hit a couple of those milestones, I kind of disappeared off YouTube for a couple years because I changed my focus at work and I wanted to do something different. I ended up cutting my body weight down from about 235 all the way down to 185, was doing some fighting stuff, doing some competing stuff. It was going really well, but my focuses were much, much different. My workouts were still based around strength, but I wasn't deadlifting anything over 500 pounds. That wasn't my focus. My focus was mainly for fighting. And that went on to about 2013, Thanksgiving morning, when we got the call saying that my buddy Mike Jenkins had died. Now, I go much more into this story in detail if you guys check the description, but short story is, I had always promised Mike when we were lifting together, we were personal trainers at Athens, we lived together at Athens back in high school, like, we had been together on this journey, and he had gotten into strongman, I was getting into fighting stuff, but he always tried to get me to do a strongman competition with him just again and again and again. At the time, all that I knew about strongman were that they were like 6'8" and like 400 pounds of fat, and I wasn't into any of that. So I just kept blowing him off. I kept being like, yeah, man, I'll do it. I'll just placate, you know? And so I never ended up doing it. We ended up separating when I left for the government, and he ended up moving to PA. And then when I got the call that he had died on Thanksgiving morning, I ended up making a decision at his funeral that I would do my first strongman competition just because I told him that I would. So that actually happened April 2014, and then by August 2014, I had opened my own gym, quit my old job, ditched all my retirement, and went full-blown into this to see what could happen. But that first year of this gym, I was 34 years old, and was the first time in my life that I've taken strength kind of to a different level and a different seriousness. And then of course all the strongman stuff was just making all my regulars just shoot through the roof. Now remember, I was coming off a long hiatus where I had not lifted anything heavy. So my front squat was at 435. My bench was probably somewhere in the high 4s at that time, probably like 475. Squatting, I can specifically remember 640 was a big deal that first year, and then deadlift 660, which at the time seemed like a massive deal. I was also strict pressing probably about 265 to 285, and with leg drive, probably like 315 at that time. Now from there, my education for lifting kind of started going through the roof. I was around a bunch of people that knew a lot more than me and training the Strongman, just was able to do so much. I was getting doors open. It was just a really, really cool time. So like, yeah, 2015 through 2017 were very, very strong years for me. So we're talking about the ages of 35 to 37, which is when most people kind of start hitting their peak of their strength stuff. And that was the first time I was able to front squat 500 pounds, which was absolutely huge for me because it had buried me so many times. July 2016 was the first time that I ever deadlifted 700 pounds, which I truly never believed would happen with these T-Rex arms, so that was a massive deal. Valentine's Day on 2017, I actually squatted 700 pounds for the first time, which for a while there, I was wondering whether the squat for 700 was gonna happen first or the deadlift, but the deadlift ended up winning. I was also able to hit a 405 push press, and I think I was around like 315 or 320 in the strict press. And yeah, I actually did come back and break my old bench PR with a 505 in 2017. And at that time, I was on the competition circuit. I was going regularly to like the national championships. I was winning local competitions at a pretty good rate. So my career was going really, really well. And then one day I got sick and started throwing up, and that's led us through 2 years of where we are now. You guys have seen some highs, some lows. The last 2 years, there have been 5 surgeries, countless doctors. It's just been an absolutely insane thing. And now I'm on the other side of it and trying to come out. But for a lot of you, don't get discouraged. Like my journey was so up and down. You need to think, when I had to get 5 surgeries this year, I started back over with an empty bar. When my leg was completely destroyed in high school, I started back over with an empty bar. When my life was too busy and I owned a karate school and was going to college full time, I was not lifting. I had to start back at a much lower weight. There have been setbacks my entire life, but the biggest thing has always been when I'm in there, I give everything I have, and then I stay consistent as possible when I am part of it. Now realize if we're just talking about years spent in the gym, I've been at this for 25 years. Not talking about when I was at home with the bench press or with those little dumbbells curling them, or even when I was a small child moving around lumber and digging holes and doing manual labor. All those things have added up to the total that I am now. So guys, you need to realize, like, if you are worried about having a manual labor job, that is only going to help you. Guys, I know it's hard, but you will get so much further in this game if you focus more on the things that you do have and the chances that you have, the opportunities that you have to give everything you have to lift concrete weights or do 1,000 reps of curls with little blue dumbbells. Do whatever you need to do to get where you need to go. And I know it's gonna be impossible to try not to compare where you are to where I am, but guys, this is a question that gets asked me all the time, and my journey isn't that impressive. It's not like I've just steadily gone. It's been highs, it's been lows, it's been all kinds of things just like yours. And the biggest thing was that every single time that I got knocked down, I came back and I just continued doing my stuff. If I would have stopped, if I would have quit, I never would be here, and you guys would be watching this. And I'm sure there's gonna be someone watching this who's going to come after me and give so much better information, lead people into something completely different, and I'm so stoked for that. So there you guys go. I hope that answers so many of the DMs and emails about where I was at different points of my journey. I know it was a long story. Thank you guys so much for staying with me, but hopefully you guys laughed at some of the old pictures. Hopefully I put up some with my long hair, and hopefully you guys just enjoyed this talk. So remember, if you want to learn more about how I got involved in Strongman, that is in the description down below, as well as kind of my real lifting journey that I lay out. That is in the description down below as well. So I just thank you guys so much for absolutely everything and staying with me. I will catch up with you later in the week. Until I do go out to something amazing in your lives, keep working hard, people. Be nice to each other. I'll see you then.